Welcome to episode 1479 of The Sleeper and the Must. I am Just Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
Uh, excited, excited, man. Had Wharf draft yesterday. Got home in one piece. Had a great time seeing everybody down there in the Metro Atlanta area. And then minutes before we started recording, USA. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, screw
It
you,
was fun
Joe.
listening to you guys react to the women's game when I was listening to that episode driving down to Georgia on Friday evening. But then, yeah, right as we were going, I was like, "Oh, are we gonna be doing this again? Like talking about live hockey during a podcast?" And then Jack Hughes, one of my daughter's hockey boyfriends, ended it. So, yay us!
Another gold medal in the books, sweeping both hockey events. I really don't care as much about like the hockey as like hockey and basketball in the Olympics. To me, it's like, yeah, I'll watch it if that's the only thing on. But for the most part, for me, I want to see the sports I never get to see. I can see hockey all year long. When am I ever going to watch, snowboard cross or, speed skating?
I
So,
miss. Oh yeah, I mean, I used to have this rule like I only watch sports that I could actually play, and I don't ice
well,
skate well. I can skate straight, but it's like, but then I love hockey now,
mhm.
so it's just like that's changed. But so yeah, I watched that. I watched some of the curling, and and that's kind of it. I'm much more of a summer Olympics dude than a winter Olympics dude. But I appreciate the talents and good for them. But you know, it's been a nice distraction. But now we got baseball. Like we got Nick Castellanos playing first base today for the Padres. Look at that. Let's go.
There we go. It's gonna be interesting to see how that works out there. So, and we are gonna be talking about your Wharf League draft. We'll talk about my Barf League draft. This was our first kind of real drafts of the year. I know you and I have both done some slow drafts, but there is a different feel, and I definitely felt it, and other people in my league felt it when you're on the clock, right? You don't have 4 hours or 2 hours to make a pick. You got to make a pick now, and that definitely changes the dynamics of things. But before we jump into that, let's just cover some quick news and notes. There's not a ton, and none of it's good, right? Well, I guess one thing could be good. Poor Zach Gallen, I'm throwing him under the bus. We'll start with the big one though. Pablo Lopez, he's going to get Tommy John surgery. Came in through a bullpen or a live batting practice, felt something in his elbow. There's significant damage. He's done for this year and probably some of next year. Uh, Obviously, you're dropping him for this year, but like, let's say you're in a dynasty league. Would you try to buy low on Pablo Lopez right now if you're rebuilding, or would you kind of just stay away from it?
Yeah, no, if he gets tossed back, sure. I can see it like in my home AL league, 11 team AL only. We don't have to make a contract decision until the third year. So I absolutely see somebody saying like a buck, two, three, some low digit number on Pablo Lopez. And obviously, you're eating year one. It's a dead bench spot. You have year two. You get something maybe in the second half, and then you decide, do you want to extend that contract or do you just say, I'm going to go into year three, which is probably the decision you should make anyhow. So if you're in like a situation like that, sure, take the chance as long as you can carry that roster spot all year. This year, and then you have a usable pitcher for 2028 and a possibility for 2027. You know my rule of thumb here. He's having a surgery this week. 18 months from now, that pretty much writes out 2027.
Yeah.
I personally have no interest in him for the next two seasons.
Yeah. I think you're looking at 2028 on Pablo Lopez, and that just isn't super enticing to me to wait that long. I mean, unless you are really looking at uh, not competing until the 2028 window, and he'll be a free agent in 2028. Who knows what kind of contract he's going to be looking at, where he's going to be at that point. So uh, I'm probably not buying low unless I can get him really, really cheap, right? I like that example of like your AL home league where you throw a buck on him, you stash him on your IL all year and then kind of see, what you think in 2027, 2028. So, but other than that, probably not. Zach Gallen is the only good piece of good news here. Uh, he goes back on a deal to the Diamondbacks. This isn't super surprising. Are you interested in Zach Gallen at all?
It didn't move the needle for me at all. I forgot who I was talking to just the other day, and I was like, okay, this was already in your realm of possibility, and I would assume the ADP market was already there anyhow, that he was possibly going back to Arizona. So no, this didn't change the way I looked at him. I saw some notes the other day from Lance Brodzowski about, hey, this is some possibility, like Gallen, if he could do this. But again, it didn't move the needle for me. It's just nice that we have a spot for him, and now we can, now we feel a little better, just in case he landed somewhere where the home park would be a problem. That's not the case anymore in Chase Field.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good home park. He knows the team. The defense behind him is going to be really good. The profile change over the last few seasons has been stark. He was a guy who was like a 105, 106 stuff plus early on in his career. The last 2 years, he's at a 92 and a 93 stuff plus. Yes, he's still pretty good at locating, but he spends way too much time in the zone for a guy who doesn't really get a lot of misses. It's what's led to kind of this inflated ERA that we saw last year. I mean, I expect him to be better than he was on the surface last year, but I don't expect him to be great. I think you're looking at a guy with like a 4.20 type ERA, and that's not something you're really wanting to take a gamble on. The price is affordable, but it's just cheap innings. That's really what it is at this point, unless we see something different in spring. So,
yep.
Lawrence Butler is out till mid-spring. They don't have an exact timetable, but he's going to miss a few weeks here at least. Does this worry you at all?
A bit. I think we mentioned this last week when we talked about, Jeff Zimmerman mentioned it when we had him on as a guest, the work that they found in the process that players need about 50 plate appearances to get their timing. And that's about what you try to get in spring training. And so if his spring training is delayed, so they're saying mid-spring training, which could be up to 2 weeks. Yeah. And so that's going to be some time missed. So if, Lawrence Butler, we already know that last year was a struggle batting average wise. There were some other things to say, there could be a bounce back in store. It's always nice when you play at Sutter Field as well. So I'm a little worried, not enough to be like, I'm moving him way down. I have not yet got Law Dog anywhere. So it's, I
had the opportunity in this draft and I passed on him. I mean, it was, like he was decently priced in my draft. I want to say he went, let's see, Lawrence Butler.
He went to 158.
158.
In fact, you took Taylor Ward right before that.
Yeah. I passed on Butler for Taylor Ward. Now my team needed the power, and Ward is just a little bit better of a power source. But you add in the fact that we're not going to see him for a few weeks into spring, at least, and I really want to see Lawrence Butler. Like for me, one of the things I talked about in the live stream yesterday, somebody asked me, like what spring stats you're looking at. Strikeouts is a big one, and especially a big one for Lawrence Butler, who saw his strikeout rate increase from 24% to 28%. I think that had, the lack of contact skills that we saw, or the degradation of contact skills we saw for Butler last year is really the alarming part.
Yeah.
And so not being able to see that in spring, see if he is back to being the guy we saw in 2024 as opposed to the guy we saw in 2025 is kind of a big deal for me. So I'm kind of off of him until I see him play in spring games.
Yep, fair. I mean, I'm looking at the difference. There was a 3-pick difference for Butler. So in Wharf and Barf, Butler was equally valued, and he was right there in the 150 range.
Yep. Joe Ryan was scratched early yesterday. Any concerns? This is inflammation in his back. This is a guy, he went in like the 4th round of my draft because the guy had not seen, he went in the 5th round of the draft because the guy had not seen that he had this back issue. Definitely is a little bit troubling when you're dealing with a back issue this early.
Well, there was only a 4-pick difference between Joe Ryan in our 2 drafts. So I don't think either audience, I don't recall pitching wasn't something I was looking at that point in mind. So, it was one of these things where I ended up taking Framber Valdez myself after that. Joe Ryan was in my queue, And I would say if Joe Ryan was still sitting there, I would have passed on him because I wore it. Like at that point, I knew I was taking my first pitcher and I wanted one of the guys that I could get innings volume from. Joe Ryan would not have made that, would not have cleared that bar for me. So I would have, if Joe Ryan would have been there when I picked my first pitcher at 70th overall, I would have passed on Joe Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I already had 2 starters by the time I picked in the 5th, so Ryan wasn't really on my board. For the 5th round, I probably would have taken him, but I hadn't seen the news either. I was like applauding the pick, and someone was all like, "Oh, Joe Ryan got scratched with a back issue," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm going to take my applause back now." I don't want people to overreact. I think one of the things that people tend to do early in spring, especially because we've gone so long without news, right? And all of a sudden we get all this news because guys are reporting, and then people just overreact, right? So if like Joe Ryan starts falling to the 6th, 7th round, I feel like that's a really nice value in drafts. Teams are really cautious early, right? So yes, he's dealing with some back inflammation, but this might just be a matter of like, hey, had a bad plane trip, or just slept wrong and he's fine. So I don't want people to get overly concerned, but it is something to keep an eye on.
So I would say this, like, I agree. I don't see this as news as moving Joe Ryan outside the top 100. I'm just saying, like, context wise, I had taken 3 hitters and a closer with my first 4 picks. So my 5th pick, it's like I didn't want to take that chance, and that's why I passed on it. But until we know more, if maybe this could be just one start, like you said, he slept wrong on a hotel bed in Fort Myers. I don't know. I'm sure he's renting a house. He makes a little bit of a coin, so he can stay somewhere nice. But maybe he's got a bad rental car. Who knows? So yeah, I'm not worried enough yet. I'm just saying team context. I support where he was taken. I passed because of how I was building that team. And if something were to go wrong, and we'll get more into my pitching later, I couldn't afford to take that chance because taking Valdez allowed me to take some other chances.
All right. We're going to talk about those teams here in a little bit. And we definitely had different builds at the start. So I'm definitely interested to do that. Edwin Uceda is dealing with a shoulder injury. Are you worried? And does this like solidify Griffin Jax as a closer there?
So I'll repeat what I said on Sirius XM yesterday afternoon. Coming into this whole season, I already had in my personal head and my fan bias, I had Uceda ranked lowest on it. And only because you don't know, there were times last year where Edwin Uceda looked great. And I know the strikeouts and some of the numbers look good. But if you watch him pitch on a day-to-day basis, there are times when he absolutely cannot find the zone. And there are times when he's utterly dominant. And the more I looked at it, it felt like more of those utterly dominant times were in the mid-leverage innings and not the later leverage innings. So I look at the depth chart and I was like, if you were to give me 100% and say like right now where things are going, I would say it's like 60% Griffin Jax, 20%, 25% Garrett Clevenger, 10% Brian Baker, 5% Edwin Uceda. And I felt that way before this news. So that's how I've been looking at this offseason. And I would also say, remember that the narrative that Kevin Cash doesn't stick with one guy is just bunk. As long as Pete Fairbanks was healthy, Pete Fairbanks was the closer. Now, the problem was Pete Fairbanks couldn't stay healthy, and that's why we had so many seasons of the Rays having 8, 10, 12 guys with saves because they couldn't keep him healthy. But these last couple of years when Pete Fairbanks has been out there, he's been the main guy. He got 20-plus saves in 3 consecutive years. So somebody is getting those. I took Griffin Jax yesterday. Wasn't targeting that, but that's how the draft worked out. But that's how I would lay that out. So we'll talk more about team specific later because I tried to hedge my bets in the reserve rounds with this as well.
All right. Yeah, I tend to want to just go with, Griffin Jax if I'm going to. Griffin Jax went super high. And it's obviously, we'll talk about this when we discuss our teams. But Jax went extremely high in my draft because all the closers did. And we'll definitely be talking some closers here in the near future because it was pretty insane how quickly these guys went. So I mean, Griffin Jax is already the guy that I was kind of pinpointing in that Tampa Bay bullpen. But I'm usually getting guys way before that to kind of fill out my closers. Because I'm always just afraid of what's left. And thankfully, like I said, in the Barf draft, at least I did that, and I'm much happier than some of my fellow league mates. Jackson Holiday, Corbin Carroll, Francisco Lindor all get hamate surgery and but are aiming to be ready for opening day. Are you drafting any of these guys?
There was no, we mentioned this yesterday in the Wharf draft, there was no Hammett discount. All those guys went right about where we thought they would go, maybe 2-3 picks off ADP, but there was no discount there. I would have no problem drafting all those guys because we've talked about it. I think you guys referenced some of the work. I look back at this in 2022, and obviously, if for any one guy that you could say, oh, this guy sucked coming off a Hammett injury, I can find you another guy that said this guy was really good. And so you have the range of outcomes. So overall, I treat this more as getting back to what we talked about when we first talked about Lawrence Butler. It's getting those PAs for timing. And so that's where I worry that maybe the first 2 scoring periods, we have a problem because these guys will have missed all of that. And now they're trying to get back into that. And so we may have a first 2 scoring periods type of situation, but I know at least in Morph, there was no discount on any of them. They were all gone by where you expected them to be gone.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the draft. I did take one of these guys. I was wanting to take a different one of these guys because they both both Lindor and Carroll dropped in my draft. So we'll definitely talk about that.
They both went inside the top 20 in mine. I'm just looking 17 and 19. They went inside the top 20. So maybe, like I said, just a couple of picks.
Yeah, I mean, it really isn't a massive discount, and it's probably because everybody's aiming to try to be back by opening day, and people want these, guys who are first-round talents in Carroll and Lindor in that second round, and I actually don't have a problem with it. Like initially, I thought they were going to miss, the first, few weeks of the season at least. Seems like at worst, maybe they miss opening day, and they're back really, really soon after. So, I'm kind of fine with taking them where they're going, which seems to be, at least in my draft, it was the middle of the first round, or middle of the second round. All right, let's finish out with one last piece that you just added, and that's Sal Stewart starting at second base. That would actually make things really interesting because Sal Stewart is a guy that I haven't really been super interested in drafts, but if he gets second base eligibility, that makes him really interesting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like it. I mean, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with all the different pieces. And I guess some of that weight that Stewart lost in the offseason is making this possible. I was listening to the RotoWire podcast the other day, and I forgot who Jeff was talking with. Maybe it was Vlad Sedler. But Jeff, as a Reds fan, referenced that Francona has already said, I want a right-handed bat hitting second in my lineup. Because they have the lefties that they have. They want a right-handed bat hitting second. So I'm curious how they make what they do. And we'll see where all of this goes. But just the fact that they're willing to give Stewart a chance to say, okay, go over here and see what you can do. I've already liked Stewart a bunch this offseason. I have him in multiple leagues. I did not get him yesterday. I wanted to. Didn't work out. But this intrigues me. I saw that camp note this morning when I was reviewing notes during one of the intermissions in hockey. And I was like, ooh, that's intriguing. So that's why I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. What do you think this does to Matt McLain? McLain has been a guy who just didn't look like the same one that we saw in 2024 or in 2023 after missing all of 2024 with injury. Do you think his playing time would be in jeopardy in this scenario? Because they're not moving Ellie, right?
Yeah, no, I don't. But I also look at this as you got to have options too. What happens if McLain has an injury? Look at that depth chart right now. What do they do?
Yeah, that's a fair
I don't
point,
see. Right? It's like you have Spencer. Somebody's going to have to step up and put a glove on and try something. So honestly, the way I look at this is they're trying to figure out what they need to do if McLain is an injury. Because I mean they've got a couple of guys in camp. They've got Garrett Hampson and Michael Chavis on NRIs. That's, you're hoping they're spending time in Louisville if they need them. That's it. But they need to have somebody that could step up in case there is an injury. And you always have to have those plan Bs. And so that's what you spring training for. See if one of these other guys that's projected to make your opening day roster can play second base.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. All right, let's talk about our Earth League drafts. You had the Wharf League, which is the best name in the Earth Leagues. It's the Waffle House area Roto League. I have the Barf League, which is the Bay Area Roto Fantasy League. These are 5x5, 15-team leagues, NFBC style, so no trades with an overall component. And a little wrinkle twist that we added in the last few years, which is whichever league performs the best overall gets money donated to that league's chosen charity. So the GLARF, which is Great Lakes area, has dominated that competition over the course of the last few years since we started doing this. I think every league is hoping to dethrone GLARF here in 2026. You were picking from the 10 spot. Let's start with your team. And we'll go through your first 5 rounds, and maybe we'll go through the next 5 rounds for me. You had picked 10. You start you start Tucker, Chisholm, Rooker, Devin Williams, and then the aforementioned Framber Valdez. Was that kind of the plan coming in, or just how the board fell to you?
So the plan coming in is, I've done a lot of these drafts, and one of the things is, diversify your portfolio. We've talked about that. You don't want to have, like, if you have a great season, if you hit everybody right, then boom, it's great. But if you miss on everybody, then the whole season tanks. And so when I was trying to lay this out, it's like, what do I want to do? What do I want to focus on with this? And a couple of goals I had was, one, I wanted to get third base early. I wanted to make sure I had outfield covered. I wanted to make sure that I had enough out, because a couple of drafts that I've done, some other 15s, like my first outfielder was Tyler Soderstrom in 2 of these. And I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself? So I'm looking at the 10 spot. What am I going to do at 10? And I was like, if Kyle Tucker's there, I want him at 10. I know that he had his issues last year in Wrigley Field. I feel he's going to be in for a monster season with the Dodgers, just with the lineup to change the ballpark. And I'm only going to take that jump. I believe I now have the new min on Kyle Tucker in the month of February for 15-team picks, but I'm cool with that. So that's where I was there. And then again, wanting to address third base early, I wanted, again, with that speed and the flexibility, Jazz Chisholm was who I was hoping would be there. And he was. And so I took that. Brett Work. I knew I was going to do 2 outfielders right out of the gate, out of my first 3 picks. And having the speed that Tucker and Chisholm provide, I wanted to focus on the power potential there. So that's why I took Rooker. Closers, as you mentioned, yours. Closers were starting to go. And then I looked at it and said, okay, I would have preferred a starter, but then I was concerned that by the time it made it back to me with the 10th pick of round 5, we would be at that other tier of closers that, when you get to that end, you're like, oh no, this is where things are going. And when I'm looking back at it, once I took Williams, then Helsley went, and that was it. But then after that, it was Estevez, Iglesias, because we had already gotten to that particular tier. And in the same vein as the Joe Ryan concerns, Josh Hader was still sitting out there, and Josh Hader went in the 6th. But I was like, I'd rather take Devin Williams or go from one of the volume plays. I was hoping to get Dylan Cease with that starting pitcher pick. Cease went 1 pick before me, so I ended up going to Valdez. But that's pretty much how I had the first 5 mapped out. I got the first 3 that I wanted for positions and skills, and 2 of the 3 by name specifically. That's how I wanted to open up, and then the other ones just kind of fell to where they did.
Yeah, I mean, I like your start. I'm a little concerned with taking Jazz Chisholm that early, considering the injury history.
Oh, it's all risk reward. I fully admit it. It's all risk reward. But he's going to go 50-50 this year. He told me that. He told me he's going to go 50-50.
If he told you that, then I'm going to believe him. But yeah, it's a bit risky in terms of the start with Jazz Chisholm. But I really like the fact that, you went with a guy like Framber after kind of missing out on or not targeting early pitching. Obviously, my start is much, much different because I went the exact opposite route. I had pick 7. I did not think Tarek Skubal would be there at pick 7. I was actually a little surprised. I thought I was going to have a decision between like taking Acuna, who I'm always scared to take an injury risk kind of guy that early, or maybe taking like Paul Skeens or Garrett Crochet. And so when Scooble fell to me, I was pretty stoked, and it was kind of an insta click pick, because I mean Carroll had been the guy who I would have been taking like kind of at 7 prior to the hamate injury. And so then we get back around for my second round pick, and Carroll and Lindor are both available in the pick before me, and I'm like, if Carroll falls, I'm probably going to take Carroll. I don't love the kind of back end of the second round this year unless you need a pitcher, right? So like if you take a pitcher in the first, like you're probably not starting pitcher in most formats, and I really don't love like the back end of the second round hitters quite as much as I love the pitchers. And so I think in the future I probably will just take a hitter in the first round so I can take a pitcher in the second round. But I ended up taking Lindor because Carroll, of course, went the pick before me. Scares the crap out of me. And this started off a theme of taking a team that was way too risky for my own liking. So I'm not a huge fan of my team this
hey,
year.
Justin, I know you don't drink, but hold my beer. We're going to get into my team.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, we both have some interesting picks here. So my other 3 picks in the first round is I really wanted a closer in the third round. I really felt like there were 3 or 4 guys that would be potentially available for me in the third. Unfortunately, Kang Do took both Andres Munoz and Mason Miller on the turn. Steven Leandres took Edwin Diaz in the second. And so I was lucky that Duran made it back to me in the third. And I pretty much like decided it was between him or James Wood. James Wood went again, the pick right before me. And I just took Duran.
So I got a question for you in this, because like, you mentioned earlier about the format of this, and Colin raised this point. I believe it was Colin or Spence. I forget what somebody said this point yesterday. What we love about the Earth drafts, there's no ADP for it because we don't have 15 team Fab League ADP when we sit down and draft at the end of February. There's draft champion ADP and there's 12 team RotoWire OC, but there's not a 15 team Fab ADP data out there on NFBC. So you're just kind of creating the own thing. But the question I have, because this was a point of a decision point I had to make, and I have one more 15 team league coming up, and it's a saves and holds league, saves and half holds. So it's a little different, but like, what if like you looked at that and let's say there was a starting pitcher there and you're like, oh, you know what? I can't pass on this guy. And you would have punted Durant. What would you have done for the rest? If you knowing what the closer pool is right now, and if you would have said, you know what, forget, I cannot pass up on the starting pitcher value, what would you have done?
If I had gotten like Hunter Brown there at 7, or sorry, at in the third round at pick 7, I would have been really, really tempted to take him there and then tried to wait a little bit more. But I think it would have been a mistake, because if you look at the board for my draft, by the time my 4th round pick even comes around, I think 6 or 7 closers are already off the board. And then I'm going to be probably more in a situation, especially because I wasn't super interested in Josh Hader given the shoulder issues. I probably miss out on a lot of the closers, and I'm kind of dumpster diving, like our good friend Eno Saris had to do.
And I'm looking through
this draft.
I'm looking through your board, and I say, okay, there's Durant, and so you pass, like, if just on the pitching, you were passing on Logan Gilbert, Max Fried, David Bednar went, Logan Webb, Cole Reagans, then it got back to you took DeGrom, but Devin Williams went right after that. But you don't know Devin Williams is still going to be there, but you could have taken one of those starting pitchers and then taken that chance with Devin Williams. But after Williams went, I'm just kind of scrolling through. And then you mentioned Josh Hader at 70. That was and then Helsley at 74. So it's like you still had options in the first 5 rounds. I'm kind of surprised that Helsley still lasted that long with that area. But I was just, because I know that's been a decision point in some of the 15s that I've done. I hate that closers have to get pushed up and in these drafts. At draft and holds, I get it. In this format, because we can go out and fab some, you're almost kind of committed to, I guess I better budget about 30% on my fab to chase saves this year if I don't get them and at least have one good anchor so I can compete in that category.
Hey, your internet is really, really bad right now.
Ah, damn it. Really? Hold on. Let me. Did that work? Somebody's unplugged something. All right. I normally hardwired into this, and I'm not even hardwired. My light's off. Somebody has tripped over. There it goes. All right. Hopefully that got better because I just
Yeah, it's not.
I'm hardwired again. So hopefully that's better. Where do we need to go back to?
I mean, it's been bad for a while, but let's see if we can just get it to a point where it's good.
All right.
Because
yeah, I don't even get it. I don't get StreamYard doesn't give you an alert. Like if Google tells you, like, hey, you've got some problems. Like right now, you're spinning on me.
Yeah. I'm hardwired in, so.
Shit. All right, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, you see,
Yeah, you were
seem
spinning.
to. Yeah, you're still kind of glitching.
Well, I guess let me come out and gosh, fuck. I don't know. I mean, I'm hard. I just noticed that my hardwire wasn't active, but now it is, and I can see that it's all there. But I don't get any notification saying, "Hi, you have a problem."
Yeah, it's really bad right now. Do you want to maybe like try resetting your internet or something like that, and then coming back?
Yeah, just let me look at something.
Oh, all of a sudden
now I'm what?
Now you seem fine.
Okay. Yeah, I've got all this Google Fiber, and I'm running a speed test, and I'm running like 100. I don't, stupid ass thing. I may have to start recording from my personal PC because my work firewall is kind of sitting on some things.
All right, why don't we just start the Earth League stuff over?
Okay.
Because you now sound fine.
All
right. So we'll just start that, and then I'll just cut around it. And hey, if you're listening to on the YouTube, I apologize, but hopefully, because I'm not going to edit this. So
yeah. Sorry for my language.
All right. So we'll just start back up with the Earth League. Let me mark it at 330 or 3304. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the Earth Leagues. You are drafting in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
And have the best named Earth League name, right? Which is the Wharf League or the Waffle House Area Roto Fantasy League. I was drafting. We usually draft in San Francisco. This is the first year since COVID that we haven't all been live due to some just unfortunate timing issues. But typically we draft in San Francisco. For the Bay Area Roto Fantasy League, Barf, you had the 10th pick. I had the 7th pick. Why don't we start and kind of just go? We'll go 5 rounds at a time for each of us and discuss. You start off your draft with Kyle Tucker, Jazz Chisholm, Brent Rooker, Devin Williams, Framber Valdez. What were your thoughts on that coming in? Was that the plan, or did things kind of go awry and you took best player available?
I would say the first 2 names were absolutely part of the plan, and I've got the. If you want to share the sheet, I've put up the sheet so we can see where things are. So the Kyle Tucker, Jazz Chisholm was the plan coming into it. That's what I decided I wanted to do. The rest of it was because kind of how things fell. I really wanted to focus on addressing third base and outfield early, it's been problematic for me in other 15-team drafts that I've done. So that was my overall goal for the early rounds. I wanted to get third baseman and 2 outfielders, a starting pitcher, and a closer with the first 5 picks. I hate taking a closer that early, just hate it. But in the 15-team format, when I know most of the rest of the room is going to do it, you have to play along, because I'm not, while there are enough open opportunities out there, if you wanted to go out there and say, you know what, I'm just passing on all this. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to see what happens in St. Louis and Washington and Arizona and Sacramento. Like, I'm going to go take my chances in some of those other ones. More power to you. I can take that chance with one of my spots, maybe 2 of them, but I feel a lot better doing that if I have one good guy that's going to at least keep me out of the bottom 5 spots of saves, so I can then try to see what else hits. So this is how mine came together. Devin Williams was sitting there at 51, and I took him. And then Framber Valdez was not the primary target. I was really hoping to get Dylan Cease there for the strikeouts, but Dylan Cease went right before me. So I ended up going back to Old Faithful, my favorite, Nick's least favorite, and I went with Valdez because I want the innings, and hopefully those continue for him in Detroit.
I mean, I honestly love kind of your first 5. The only one I would somewhat question is the Jazz Chisholm pick. That early, it's a lot of risk to take on. But who am I to talk? Because we're going to talk about my top 5 here, and there's plenty of risk. I definitely did not draft a team that I. It was funny. I was doing a live stream with Eno Saris was with me, and Jake Crumpler and Mike Ulrich, like from the league, and like there were a lot of people in the comments being like, "This is not a Justin Mason team," and it definitely wasn't one that I am super proud of in terms of my risk tolerance.
Hey, I got the same comment. Somebody's like, "I've never seen you draft like this." I'm like, "Hey."
I will say though, this is like the first draft of the year in terms of like an actual like on the clock. I don't know how long you guys gave each other in terms of
2
a
minutes.
draft clock. We had 1 minute. And so when you're kind of gotten used to that slow draft feel and you move to that 1 minute, it changes things. And I definitely made some decisions that I think if I had an hour or 2 to think about, I might not have made. So we'll talk about my first 5. I went Tariq Skubal, who I was actually kind of surprised was going to be there at 7. Typically, I'm the kind of guy that I want to take hitting in the first, especially because I love a lot of the second round pitchers. But when the best pitcher on the board is there at pick 7, it was kind of an insta click for me, which left me in a position where I felt like I had to take a hitter in the second round, and I don't really love them. And so this is the spot where I take Francisco Lindor. I almost got Corbin Carroll. He was the guy I was really, really hoping was going to fall to me when I was kind of in this position. I knew I was going to take a hitter in the second round. And I was, I'm very nervous by it. Now, like we said, when we talked about the hammy bone stuff earlier on in the show, these guys are all aiming for opening day. I'm hoping it's going to work out. And he's not going to miss much time or any time. But you just never know how the power kind of rebounds from or after these surgeries, at least initially. So
yeah, and it can go either way. I mean, I wrote about this in 2022. There are examples where like Juan Soto came back from his and just absolutely raked, and there are examples where other guys just didn't. Right? I was looking at the 3 major, the Holiday, the Lindor, and Carroll. There's a half a round difference between our 2 leagues and when these guys were taken. So both rooms, 30 different people attacked it similarly, and basically it's about a half round difference in between the 2. But I'd say by ADP, there wasn't much of a difference where things were going. People, I looked at the ADP for the month of February, and I think the lowest, I think somebody fell 5 spots off that. So that's kind of where the market is with the news, because the news came out after February 1st, but I included that data, and that's where we're at. So there's no Hammett discount.
No, there isn't one. And understandably, and so because I mean these are kind of elite players, especially both Lindor and Corbin Carroll. I then continue my I took Johan Duran in the 3rd. we had insane closer prices, like truly, truly insane. And I knew this was going to kind of happen. And so I kind of pegged that no matter who my first two picks were, I was going to take a closer in the third. I expected to have a few options. I have kind of four guys at the top of my closer board in Edwin Diaz, Andres Munoz, Mason Miller, and Johan Duran. Unfortunately, Diaz goes in the kind of the late second to Steven Leandres. Geng Do takes back-to-back closers in my draft on the turn at the one spot after taking Otani in the first round. And so I was actually even just kind of lucky that Duran falls to me. If he doesn't fall to me, I don't know what I do there. Maybe I take Machado, maybe I take Harper or even Yordan Alvarez and just add more, risk to my team. But I was super happy with that. And then I get Jacob deGrom in the fourth, Hunter Goodman in the fifth. I'm not a big deGrom guy this year just because of the age and the health risk. But when he's my number two, I felt better about it. And I almost, again, this is a draft of almost. I really want in the fourth round. I was really hoping, and now I'm not even finding him on my draft board.
Who is it?
Ben Rice. I thought Ben Rice almost made it to me or maybe it was the third round.
I'm looking at my board. I can't see your board's too small for me to look at. Ben Rice went early in mine.
He went. Oh no, this was in the fifth round. I was hoping, or in the fifth round. I almost took Ben Rice in the fourth, instead of deGrom. And then I was like, you know what? No catcher, only Cal Raleigh had gone. There were still William Contreras, Ben Rice, Shea Langeliers, and Hunter Goodman on the board in the fourth round. So I figured I could get one of those guys later. Unfortunately, all of them except for Goodman go in the fifth or late fourth, early fifth. And so I end up with Goodman. I'm fine with it. I needed some power at that point because I don't know what Lindor's power is going to be. What are your thoughts on that first five?
So a question I would have for you was like when you were sitting there looking at closer, because I was looking at our league and Cade Smith was the first closer off our board. And Cade Smith went with the 28th overall pick to the defending league champ and the guy that finished third overall. So it's like, okay, cool. You're making that call. I love Cade Smith, but I was really surprised to see him be the first guy. But if that's going to be your call, if that's the guy you value 1-1 at the position, go for it. And there's a lot of thing to be said about that, because if you look back at Emmanuel Clase before he had his troubles last year, he was getting that ball a lot. Cleveland's going to be in a lot of close games. Smith's going to get a lot of strikeouts. I can see how that can work. But then we had our own closer run. Diaz, Miller, Munoz, Duran all went back to back in the middle of the third round, and then Bednar went at the end of the third round. So we had the top 6 closers out before pick 45. But I was like curious because in a couple of 15s that I've done, I personally like to take the approach. I want one of the top 8. I want one of those guys, and then by the time if Ryan Helsley, if I can't get like to the Ryan Helsley group, I'm almost to the point where I'm just going to punt and go and try to take advantage to see what happens in the Washington, the Sacramento, the St. Louis. Like, go find the situation. Go, take a dart at the White Sox bullpen with Dominguez or whatever. But I'm almost to the point where if I don't get one of those guys, and I can see another value, I'm like, if I can't pass on a value, that's the kind of the tax I have to pay. But I'm curious about you, because I was looking at your draft board and you could have passed on Duran and picked up another good volume starting pitcher, like Logan Webb would have been there. And there were still a couple of closers that were available with your next pick when you took deGrom.
If there was a guy that I really felt good about as a starter in the third, I might have done it. If Brian Wu, if Chris Sale, if Hunter Brown fell to me in the third, I definitely would have considered it, and then maybe try to get like Devin Williams in the fourth. But Devin Williams was available in the fourth for me. Like I could have definitely done that. But what I was afraid of is what ended up happening. Pretty much like every closer went before the seventh round, or in the seventh round or before. And with how shaky the back end of the closer pool is this year, I just see these guys continually getting pushed up, and I just didn't want to mess with it. Eno was on the live stream with me, and he was dying because he just kept going hitting and then grabbed some starting pitching, and all of a sudden all the closers were gone, and he ends up having to take Kenley Jansen in the eighth, who, while I think he's probably going to be the guy in Detroit, he might not be, right. And then Eno's second closer isn't until round 22 in Robert Stevenson, but that's mostly because you got Griffin Jacks, as we'll talk about here in a second, in what, the ninth round. He went in the seventh in ours. Like there was nobody left. There were massive closer runs. I think there were like six closers that went, five closers that went in the seventh round, including Griffin Jacks at the end of this seventh, and another two go in the eighth round. It was really bad, and so I'm glad I didn't mess with it. I'm going to continue to not mess with it. I'm going to pay for saves all day long, and so I was happy with the way it turned out. I wasn't super happy with just the amount of risk I took on that early. Francisco Lindor having the hamate bone surgery, and then DeGrom, who's obviously an elite talent, but has had a litany of health issues over the course of the last 5 years, scares the crap out of me, and I didn't shy away from that later, unfortunately. Let's go to the next five. You drafted Kyle Bradish, Corey Seager, Blake Snell, Griffin Jackson, Brenton Doyle. So speaking of risk tolerance, what are you thinking here?
Oh, we're only getting started, brother.
Oh, God.
So, starting pitching was running away. I could not make up my mind. So when pitching came back to me, I was looking at I had Yuri Perez in my queue. He went. And then my decision point came down to Bradish, Pivetta, and Woodruff. Those were and that's who went after. I didn't like this spot at all, but I was worried that, okay, if I pass on pitching here, I don't know what's going to be here. So I made the call to go with the guy I like best. I know I'm not the only guy that's comfortable with Bradish as an SP2 for the upside, but then the recent talk about, oh yeah, I expect some kind of limit on my workload. But hopefully it's just, he's really good when he's out there pitching. But Bradish isn't somebody I was targeting. It just that's what the case of pitching was by the time it got back to me. And I had a thought process of maybe I just take a few more hitters, but I wanted some balance. I wanted to be, I'd like when I do these 15 teamers, I like being in about a 6-4 balance type of situation. So I went with Bradish here. Seager at shortstop. I was looking at the other position. It was just one of these things where I was looking for balance there. We got to Blake Snell, and this is where, I think I took 90 seconds of my 120 seconds to talk through this one, because after that, Chase Burns went, Nolan McLean went, Ryan Pepio. I felt it was I was hoping to get Pepio to come back at a 10, and Pepio went to Eric at the turn. I would have taken Pepio if he had been there if he had come back to me in the ninth inning, but he was gone. And that's how I ended up with Griffin Jacks, because I was like, okay, the starting pitcher was really hoping to get, and Lodolo and Gossman had also gone, and then Jansen went right before me. And so that was one of the things I'm like, okay, I'm looking at what's left of the closer market, and it's like, do I take the guy that I think has the best chance, not lock solid, but the best chance, and the worst case, you get good ratios, and then I debated with Abner Uribe, who went right after me. So it's in that road, it was Jansen, Jackson, Uribe, and then that's when that closer cliff hit. So in ours, it hit at the there, but Jacks, when I'm looking, so that's kind of where I ended up on Jacks and Doyle. You and Paul talked about it the other day. We're all in the same agreement on Doyle. You give him a complete pass on last year with everything he went through off the field, and you hope that he can come back to where he was in 2024. He's going to get as much playing time as possible out there, because he's the best defender in that outfield by far. And I'm excited for a rebound season for him overall. And so that's why I took Doyle there to round out the first 10 rounds.
I love the Doyle pick. I tried to get him in the 11th, and he got sniped right in front of me. And I was kicking myself for not taking him, but we'll talk about my team here in a second, in terms of those rounds, because mine are somewhat insane. Or I have a couple insane picks there, but Bradish, I think, is a really, interesting bet. I do worry that Bradish is going a little bit too high in drafts, but I love what we saw at the end of last season. I just worry about the health. Worrying about the health with Corey Seager is just what you get. But as we'll talk about with my draft, because this is the first player that we have where we took the same guy, and one of the few players
in the
where
same round too.
Yeah, same round. It is just too good of a value on Corey Seager in the 7th. I mean, this is a guy who has been like, a second through 4th round player in drafts most of his career. And the fact that we're getting him in the 7th round here just feels like a steal. Now, when we get to my team, I'll explain a little bit of the backstory because I'm going to have some yelling to do. But Blake Snell scares me, especially because I think he's slow to kind of get going here in spring training. Griffin Jacks, you're getting your second closer is fine. But yeah, like I said, love Brenton Doyle. I probably wouldn't have gone Blake Snell, but I did something similar. So I really can't beat you up for it, especially considering your SP that you took in the 6th is way safer than the SP I took in the took in the 5th. Is way better than, or way safer than the one I took in the 4th.
See, I cannot tell you, I have run away from Blake Snell. I had him in the Cy Young in the first Cy Young year because the rebound was just so painfully obvious, and that was fun. But I have kind of run away from him just about every year since. And I've just looked at it and I was like, at this point, the upside, I'd already done it with Bradish, but I was staring at it and I was like, you know what? And this is kind of where the draft really started going in a direction for me. I was like, I'm just going to start taking upside and second chance guys moving forward and see what happens. And I did that all the way until round 17 or 16. I just kept taking guys of a similar skill set like that.
Yeah. All right. So my guys in round 6 through 10 were Jackson Merrill, Corey Seager, just like you, Nico Horner, Tyler Glasnow, and then Dennis Santana. After the discussion with Paul on the episode last week on Merrill, I'm definitely been pushing him up my board a little bit. And I did not have an outfielder. I didn't have much offense. I knew I wanted to hammer offense with these kind of first 3 picks from round 6 through 9. And I did. So I take Jackson Merrill, gives me 5 category production. We already talked about Corey Seager. The funny part was I was really on the fence on whether to take Corey Seager here or take Seiya Suzuki. I love Seiya Suzuki. We talked a lot about him. And Eno and I were kind of going back and forth, and he was all like, I was like, should I do the fun thing or should I do the smart thing? Because I felt the smart thing was Suzuki, especially with how far the outfield pool kind of drops off after Suzuki. But Corey Seager is just so fun when he's healthy, man. But it added a second shortstop to my roster already. It added a guy who is injury prone, and I've already got a guy who's starting the year hurt in Lindor. And I was like, I really shouldn't do this, but I did. And then, of course, Eno takes Kurt Suzuki or Seiya Suzuki, a few picks later and laughs at me. He's like, I'm so glad you didn't take Suzuki. I really wanted him. Like, you son of a... So that was a fun moment in the draft. I'm totally fine with the Seager pick. I took Nico Horner because I felt like my team needed some speed. I would agree. And some batting average. So getting Nico Horner just kind of really was a team fit there. It left me with my entire middle infield fit or fixed by that point, right? Like I could not, and that I kind of regretted because there's so many guys kind of at shortstop and second base later that I love, and I was kind of blocked off from really taking them in this draft, which is fine because I'll have other drafts later on where I can get those guys. But I definitely felt like, oh, maybe I should have, instead of taking Seager, maybe I should have taken Suzuki because it would have left me with a little bit more roster flexibility later on in the draft. Then I take Tyler Glasnow. And this was one of those picks where it's like, I didn't know who to take at that point. I was really struggling to make a decision, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to shoot for upside and just hope and pray. He's my third starting pitcher. I hate the pick. I really hate the pick. Not because he's a great pitcher, and this is the cheapest you're going to get him probably ever. Being on the Dodgers and stuff, but it's just way too much risk. And then I took Dennis Santana. I just wanted to lock down more things. Like I said, this draft that I did was one of the harshest in terms of closer inflation, and getting Dennis Santana, who I think is just going to be the guy in Pittsburgh unless they trade for someone mid-season. Felt pretty good to lock down kind of a second closer in round 10.
Yeah, for a second closer, I get it. I mean, Santana definitely has his flaws, but he also has the job, and that's
there's no one else.
Exactly. There could be somebody else, but not for. It's going to take some time. I would be stunned if it opens up like last year, where Bednar just fell apart immediately due to bad luck, and then he gets sent down, and they throw somebody else in. But there is no. It's his job until he pitches his way out of it, but he's going to have time to pitch his way out of it.
Yeah. And I get a few other guys to take dart throws later. All right, let's move to the next. We'll do the next 10 here. So you go Adley Rutschman in the 11th, Tovar, Shane Baz, Royce Lewis, Shane McClanahan, Kyle Manzardo, Willie Castro, Jack Leiter, Harry Ford, and then Parker Messick. Tell me your thoughts on that.
I hate it. So I mean, and I will say this, that I hate it, and I would. So I love auctions. I mean, you and I know this. I love auctions. I do not like snake drafts. But I love using draft software to organize my thoughts. And I don't like how draft software organizes snake drafts. It annoys me. And I haven't found a happy medium, but taking Rutschman when Gabriel Moreno and Francisco Alvarez were still out there, I really hate. I did not like that pick. And after I made, I was like, okay, I'm just trying to think. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, you know what? I'm not taking a catcher yet. Several have gone off the board. This is something I need to do. And then I took Rutschman. Then I was like, oh God, what am I doing? I could have waited on that. I did not like that particular pick. And then doubled up with Tovar because I was actually wanting to take Bryson Stott there. And I wanted to get something up the middle, and I could not find Stott. I thought I had made a mistake. And then I ended up I couldn't make up my mind between the two. And because I found Tovar, I took Tovar. I wanted Stott. And if I could do it again, I would like to redo those two picks. I hope they don't work out as badly as my gut is telling me. If I could have had the other two, but I don't like those two. Then we get into the pitching side of stuff. And, when I took Baz, after that, I passed on Cade Horton and Jack Flaherty. But I've been fading Cade Horton. I have 0 shares. Mm-hmm. I really don't want him. And so I can justify that particular thing. And Shane Baz getting out of Steinbrenner Field and moving into Camden Yards, and with the offensive support, I like Baz. Then we got to Royce Lewis, and I could not help myself. I'm like, look, I've already taken all these other chances with Shane Baz and all these others. So just lean into it. Just go. You've said it all winter. Like, you're never going to quit Royce Lewis. He's going to end up on your teams. And I believe you've even said, if he's still sitting there outside the top 200, I'm taking Royce Lewis. Well, that's exactly what I did. He's there at 201. I took Royce Lewis because, again, we know what the depth is at third base. We know what his upside is. And this is a theme. And then McClanahan has pitched as many innings as I have in the last 2 years. But he's sitting, this time people have taken him much higher over the last 2 seasons with the hope he was coming back, and he didn't. So he's sitting out there at this point. I'm like, okay, lean into it. Let's keep going because the upside is high. And then we get to Manzardo, power play. Castro, it was kind of like your Horner. I want some speed. And apparently I'm a closet Rockies fan now because I got Doyle and I've got Tovar and I've got Willie Castro. But, you guys brought it up when you talked about the position preview. Castro's going to play a bunch out there, and his home stat should help. My favorite pick of the entire draft was getting Jack Leiter at 260. I'm really big on Leiter this year, and I absolutely loved getting Leiter that late because that was about 2 rounds past his ADP, and I was kind of surprised he was still sitting there. And then Harry Ford was just because catcher was already made one mistake, but there was a big drop off. So I'm like, who's got the most upside? And when I looked at what was still sitting out there at the position at that point, that was it. There just really wasn't. After I took him, there just wasn't. It was Carson Kelly, Freddie Fermin, Edgar Cuero, Caratini, Bo Naylor, Dalton Rushing, Kyle Higashioka. I could take 7 cards, throw them up in the air, and land which one lands face up is the one I would have taken. So I went with the guy with the most upside in my book, and I took Harry Ford well above his ADP. But when I was looking at that, by that point of the draft, that was the theme of the draft. When we were looking at our stuff, the ADP range in the 280s. The difference between we were about almost a full round with that, but Harry Ford was well above it. But again, it's the second catcher. It's late in the draft, and I'm looking at upside at that point. And that's why I took Harry Ford well above slot.
I wanted Harry Ford in my draft, and we got to like the 22nd round.
See, I took him in the 19th.
Well, no. So we got the 22nd round, and I noticed only 2 teams were needing a second catcher, and I was all like, I think I can get somebody I like or somebody I'm okay with in the last round of the draft. Like and then Edgar Cuero went in the 26th round. I'm like, I'm just waiting to the last round. I think I'm going to get Harry Ford, and then somebody took a third catcher in Harry Ford that really didn't need a third catcher in the 28th round. And I was kicking myself for not taking him earlier because the beauty of taking a guy like Harry Ford is if he doesn't make the opening day roster, you can drop him before opening day, right? Because we're drafting so far in advance, right? And so I do like that pick. It is a bit early, or a lot early, but I do like that pick.
Well, honestly, hey, Justin, here it is. Kyber Ruiz wasn't even taken in our draft. So it's like,
what?
Yeah, I just looked the search. Ruiz was not even taken in our draft.
Okay, well that's insane.
So that'd be the move. If Ford doesn't make it drop, I'll just flip the 2.
Yeah,
and then keep Ford on watch because now that he's been drafted, you can pick him up before he's activated again. So it's like you can do that whole play.
Mm-hmm. I like most of the guys. I'm not a big Tovar guy, but where you got him is fine. The Shane McClanahan one is the one that I go, oh man, you've added a lot more risk to this team. But honestly, I mean, you know how much I love Royce Lewis. We're going to talk about me not getting Royce Lewis here in a second. But actually, I like a lot of these picks. Obviously we've discussed ad nauseum or talked about ad nauseum, just the amount of risk we both put on our individual teams. So that is what it is. I'm not going to continue to harp on it, but
it's like the difference. McClanahan went 4 picks earlier in Barf, but like Jack Leiter, that's what when I was looking at this. I got Jack Leiter 36 picks. Oh, I'm sorry. Jack Leiter went even later in Wharf. I'm sorry. He went 261 to Howard, and I took him at 225. But again, pitching had already moved all over the place. But what I was trying to find, okay, who can give me some upside here along with some health? I'm looking at Jack Leiter. I got snaked on Joe Musgrove at one point. Somebody I was going to just keep adding these rebuilds, but Jack Leiter, really, that was my favorite pick, probably of my entire team. That was my favorite one.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Leiter pick. I loved when Howard took Leiter too, in our draft as well. But like we just had like a run. McClanahan went in a tier of in my draft in a tier of like injury risk guys, right? Jack Flaherty, Merrill Kelly is dealing with an issue. Bryce Miller was injured last year. Then Shane McClanahan, then Jack Leiter, Garrett Cole, Joe Musgrove, Shane Bieber. Like it was a ton of guys who've been dealing with injuries. So it was really interesting to kind of watch it all go around my picks. My picks. I
had it wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize. I did get. No, Jack Leiter did go 225 in Wharf. I got him at 260. I'm sorry. Jack Leiter 225 in Barf.
Yeah.
I got Jack Leiter 261 in Wharf. So I did
he went a lot. Yeah, he went a lot earlier than I expected to. He was definitely a guy on my list. And then when he went, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to do something different here. All right, my picks from round 10 on, or round 11 on. I needed power. I went with Taylor Ward. I definitely could have gone a number of different directions. Like I said, Lawrence Butler was there, Dylan Cruz there, Ian Happ was available. But I needed power, and I felt the best about getting that power from Taylor Ward. And then I offset the batted average I might get with Stephen Kwan with my next pick. I then took Torkelson in the 13th round, only because as soon as I made the Kwan pick, I went, I know who I'm taking next. And I didn't say who it was because it was on a live stream, obviously. But I was all like, I've got this guy. This guy's mine. I looked at the ADP. I was like, there's no way this guy goes here. And Royce Lewis went at the back end of that round after I said that. And I absolutely lost my shit. I mean, I just completely lost it on the live stream. I was so upset, so angry. So like, I just took Torkelson mostly as like, this is a guy I like, and I needed the power, and I don't at that point I don't think I had a corner bat in my draft if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, I didn't have a first or a third baseman, and I was just so upset. So I pulled the trigger on Muncy the following round a little bit early, but I just feel like Muncy is one of the more underrated guys in drafts this year. Like, you're getting a power hitting guy in the Dodgers lineup after pick 200 just feels too good to be true. Then I needed to add some innings, and so I took a kind of just a innings eater guy on a good team in Matthew Boyd and Ryan Nelson, who is probably my most drafted guy this year. I really like what he did. He's working on the shape of a couple of his pitches too this spring. I just really loved it. But what I noticed when I got to round 17, and actually, I mean, I noticed it before, was I felt pretty good about power. I felt pretty good about my pitching. I definitely had saves locked in. What I didn't have was speed. And that was a problem. I really felt like I was far behind in stolen bases. And when you're far behind in stolen bases, you end up, at this point in the draft, you end up making a decision that you tell people on your podcast not to make, which is go draft Chandler Simpson. And I know he's already dealing with a hamstring issue. I don't like these rabbit types that can, one injury, one demotion, and all of a sudden your team's missing 40, 50 stolen bases. But it's what my team needed. And this is why I say, like, you should not plan for a guy like Luis Ariz or Chandler Simpson to, coming into a draft. These are mistake fixers, and he was a huge mistake fixer for me. Scares the crap out of me.
Yeah. I mean, well, at 247, who cares? Because Chandler Simpson went 146. He went 146 in WARF.
It was almost the max in 15-team league since the beginning of the year. It was a really huge discount. And that's part of the that was why I was willing to take the shot where I did. Like, I wasn't taking him just because he was a discount. I was taking him more like I really need speed, and he probably would have gone earlier in most drafts.
And maybe it's just a draft context, because I'm looking at, as much as you like Ryan Nelson went 103 picks later in WARF. He went
103. That's insane.
So Simpson went 101 picks earlier than you took him, and then Ryan Nelson went 103 picks later.
Yeah, I mean, his ADP is 265.
Nelson went 337 in ours.
Wow. I mean,
he went in the end of the 23rd round, and I will tell you that I was rather upset there, because that queue went Nelson, Singer, Connolly early, and that's where I wanted to go, and I ended up taking my guy Justin Sterner just out of whatever, because I wanted a third guy. But I looked at that, there were my pick was coming up in 4. I literally had those 3 starters in my queue, and they went boom, 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 and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, there were some like decimations of my queue in my draft as well. It was a very fun draft, but also a very frustrating draft. Then no surprise to anybody, I ended up with Andrew Vaughn in this draft as my
no surprise at all.
Just no. I mean, it's just. I mean, this is another one of those guys that I'm just going to end up with in every league, if he's available. Like, at this pick, 264. It's just way too cheap for Andrew Vaughn. Then I had 2 starting pitchers I was eyeing in 19. Parker Messick and Zebby Matthews. I have Parker Messick rated above Zebby Matthews, but I looked at the ADP and I looked at the people in my draft. And this is where it's like, it's good to know your league, right? And I knew Eno was going to make 2 picks before it got to me. I knew some other people in the industry, are really, really high on Xavier Matthews for good reason. And I went, I'm going to take Matthews first and then try to get Messick on the way back. It worked out well for me. And I really like the pairing of the two because I get the high upside of Xavier Matthews with a high floor of Parker Messick kind of paired there. Really my 2 favorite picks of the draft are those 2 back to back where I get Matthews. And
I love that. I love when I was going through your team, I was like, I'd love that duo there. And that's where like I look across the line and I took Harry Ford there. And if I could have rewound that, I could have had Harry Ford. There's like I just really screwed up a catcher. I'm just gonna say that because I could have had Xavier Matthews went 4 picks later, and I was kicking myself for that happening because we both ended up with Parker Messick in the next round. So it's like that's the difference. But I love that duo late for you. Getting those 2 pitchers. Love the upside of both those guys. And that's where I really regretting that Harry Ford pick because Xavier Matthews was right there, and I should have because I have several shares of Xavier Matthews, and I expect Saturday's labor auction to be a competitive situation with several guys out there that have written up Xavier Matthews this winter.
All right, why don't you go finish out your last 10 rounds, and I'll finish out mine.
Let's see. Can we feel better about these? So I took Rengifo at 21. Because I was looking at playing time. He just got the job in Milwaukee. We know he can do that. And I was looking for a little speed there late. And so that's where I went with him. I went with Mullins for a 5th outfielder, looking for that depth. I took Justin Sterner as my 3rd reliever, thinking that he still has the best chance. I still feel he has the best stuff in that Oakland Athletics bullpen to get that job. If not, he's an easy cut. Then I was, okay, I've taken some pitching chances. Why not just take the worst insurance policy out there and get Zach Eflin in my first reserve? Because Zach Eflin, if the back surgery has worked and everything's good, we know what he can do with his skills. And so I'm hoping that everything is good with the back. Josh Bell, I have talked about him all winter. He has been somebody I've actively targeted in the reserves of these formats because I believe as long as he stays in Minnesota, he's going to hit because the under the hood stuff plays. Lane Thomas had the foot surgery. It wasn't long ago. He was stealing all those bases. He's also hit for power in recent years. And so that I was looking for 1 outfield reserve. I took you on Moncada because he's still the projected cleanup hitter for Anaheim. He was still sitting there, and I took him for the volume. And then I just did some pitching thing. I did Carmen Mlodzinski because I like the upside of what he can do. We don't know what his role is going to be yet, but I just honestly didn't like much else that was still sitting out there at that point. Brian Baker was what I referred to earlier. I was hedging my bet. I have what I figure is 70% of the odds of the Rays closer position. And if we get to the end of camp and Kevin Cash comes out and says, Jax is our guy, I'm dropping Brian Baker immediately. But we'll see. We have time for that. And that's the only reason that Brian Baker was well above ADP. But I'm just hedging my bet because I know I'm going to cut one of these guys. Shit, last year I cut Jacob Wilson in the 28th round because I needed somebody right out of the gate. So Brian Baker will likely be my first cut if it's not Harry Ford. But then I took Jacob Melton, kind of like the same thing with Harry Ford, looking for upside. Maybe he makes a team out of camp. Maybe he doesn't. But the fact that he's been drafted means we can drop him. We can try to pick him up cheaper later with that. So that's how I rounded up my draft.
I like it. I mean, I love Cedric Mullins. Rengifo is a guy on my board. He went before I was able to take him. Sterner, another guy on my board, went before I was able to take him. We both ended up with Eflin. Josh Bell, I think, is just a steal at this price. Like, especially if you're looking for a first baseman on your reserve, it just makes a ton of sense. I'm not a big Lane Thomas guy, but who cares if you know where you took him? Here's the thing. So, and I mentioned this in the live stream when we were drafting. One of my favorite articles to do every year, which I unfortunately didn't do this year, is my apology tour, right? Where I break down every single one of my teams, month by month, and really, show where I went wrong in a draft, right? And the one thing I have learned from doing that article for multiple years is you are going to, even like your good teams, even your teams where you win, you are going to drop 13 to 17 guys that you drafted.
Yeah.
So when we get to the second half of the draft, especially get after round 17, like these are all guys that you should be willing to drop immediately if you need to, right? Or and then you're most likely going to drop. Now, some of them are obviously going to be hits. They might help you win a league, but for the most part, like it doesn't really matter who you take as long as you take guys you want to, that you want on your team. So because you're going to end up dropping most of these guys anyways. So I mean, I like what you did. I think Brian Baker is a nice little pick. I did something similar. Yon Moncada is hitting cleanup, which is insane, but like it's a nice little end of your draft. I finished out my draft with Chase DeLauder in round 21. Right now he's projected to hit like 4th or 5th in the Cleveland Guardians lineup. We know this is a top tier prospect who's just struggled to stay healthy. He's left-handed, so he's going to take advantage of that wind tunnel and right. I think there's a pretty good chance that he's going to make this team and be really, really good this year. I was between him and now I'm blanking on dude's name who's going to be the rookie center fielder for the Phillies.
Justin Crawford.
Thank you. I was between the two, and of course Crawford went the next pick. But I love what DeLauder could potentially bring this season. I ended up taking Victor Robles, just a little bit of a speed hedge on Chandler Simpson if he does miss time. I think Robles, got injured early on last season, but in 2024 he was so good. And he's projected to be the everyday right fielder in Seattle. I think there's a chance like he is just a really good cheap speed option. Clay Holmes is a guy I keep ending up with in drafts and in mocks. I'm not a big Clay Holmes fan, but I feel like 337 is just too good of a price for the amount of innings you're going to get from Clay Holmes in a good park on a good team. And so I with all the risk I had in my pitching staff already, I wanted a guy who could give me innings, and it was between him and Kikuchi and Brandon Pfaadt. And I went with Holmes, thinking I could get one of those two in the next round. Neither were available, so I just kind of continued on my draft. I wanted a player who was eligible at third base because I already had 2 first basemen and 1 third baseman. And so I took Marcelo Mayer, also knowing that he was going to pick up second base eligibility, likely very early on in season. I also picked up Kobe Mayo later, who's first base eligible, but is going to pick up third base. So that kind of covers all my infield backup positions between those two. Mayo is with Jordan Westberg out and likely out for a really, really long time. Is a really, really good buy right now. Pick 414. I just, there's so much upside. If it doesn't work out, I move on to somebody else. But he's first base eligible now, going to be third base eligible really early on in season. So I love the Kobe Mayo pick. I took Bryce Eldridge, who's just an upside pick. I think he's going to make the Giants roster and play every day. Ton of power potential, but another guy, if he doesn't make the roster, if he's really, really struggling, I think you're going to know these things pretty early, and I could drop him, before the start of the season if I need to. I took 2 relievers in Paul Sewald, who I think will be the closer in Arizona, at least to start the year. And then Cole Sands, a dart throw in Minnesota. We don't know what Derek Shelton's going to do at the back end of the bullpen, if they're going to stick with that kind of closer by committee circus we've been seeing over the last few years, or if they're going to name a guy. It's just a guy I threw a dart at. Maybe I sneak a save in the first weekend of the season, or maybe I end up dropping him really, really fast. And then my last catcher, like I said, I really wanted Harry Ford, like you got. He went in the 28th round unexpectedly. A team who already had 2 catchers. And so my options were Danny Jansen, who ended up going later in the last round, Dalton Rushing, or Freddie Fermin. Fermin was the highest rated guy on my board at that point at catcher, but I made the decision I would go for Dalton Rushing in the hopes that he gets traded before opening day. There have been rumors that the Dodgers could shop him because they have Will Smith locked into a long-term deal, and they can move Dalton Rushing for a piece that better fits their win now approach. And I think if he gets onto a different team, he could be really, really good. And if he doesn't get traded, I can drop him very easily before the start of the season, go pick up a Freddie Fermin type.
Yeah, I was looking through. Like I said, I'd love to. You and I with Eflin, same brain. Paul, I was wondering if Bubba had a reaction to Paul Sewald, because Bubba took Paul Sewald as Mr. Irrelevant in our Arizona Speaker League. So pick 750, he was able to score Sewald. And we were all, and it wasn't like the news came out as he was picking. We were all staring at that for about a round and a half to 2 rounds, and Bubba took him at the end. I did a similar thing in my RotoWire OC. I believe I took Sewald in the reserves of that one, because I was looking for, again, see what news plays out in that situation, because Lord knows if we don't draft him and he gets taken week 1 fab, somebody's dropping money on that. So it's like, why not take the chance and see where that goes? But I was curious, because I was looking at some players that you all drafted. There's about 35 players that were different. Like, we took some players that you guys didn't. So I'm looking over in Barf. I found some players that I thought was curious that you guys took that we didn't. I mentioned Ruiz earlier, but like notable names, we took Spencer Schwellenbach. Nobody in your league took him. Matthew Liberatore was taken by you guys. Nobody in our league took Liberatore. That was probably Eno, wasn't it?
Liberatore, what pick number was it?
I don't have the pick number. I was looking at it was Eno, because Eno said he took it with his last pick. It was pick 440, because Eno has said he has taken Liberatore everywhere. I forgot what his reasoning was, but he said it in one of the Rates and Barrels podcasts recently. So you guys took Carson Williams. We did not. So I would say, look, those are some of the notables. And then some guys that Worf took that you guys didn't, notably Cody Clemens went in our league. Somebody went with the volume of Jose Barrios. Me taking Lane Thomas. Justin Steele went in our league. Uceda went in our league. Me taking Moncada. went. Jet Williams went. Calvin Fauché. Somebody's taking that shot in the bullpen there. Zach Cole, the situation with the Astros outfield, and Brandon Sproat. So those are just some of the differences. Even in a draft that has 450 names, there were still 30-ish players that were unique to each league.
It was a very interesting kind of end game. My strategy with the end game, especially when you're drafting this early, is to take gambles on guys that you think might have a much higher ADP by the end, right? And in knowing that you can drop these guys before the start of the season, we get 1 fab run before the start of the season, and so you want to take gambles on these guys that are rookies or potential closing candidates, especially with how muddled things are right now. If a guy like Sewald is named the closer, he's going to be going in the 16th, 17th round, right? At the end of March. If a guy like Cole Sands is a closer, he's going to be going in the 17th, 18th round. So like taking the shot on those guys, knowing that I can drop them really quickly, is the ideal strategy. Not to mention, oftentimes we see in opening weekend guys sneak saves, guys sneak wins that we weren't necessarily expecting to, because they're teams are being pretty careful with their starters and the relievers in the first weekend of the season. And so that's usually my plan of attack. Overall, I don't love my team. I'm not going to lie. I feel like every year with how early Barf is, I don't love my team. Projections, I think Richard Sands ran ATC projections on our league, and it had me finishing in 3rd, which is actually better than I expected. And I don't know what like the Fantasy Pros projections that you get at the end.
I got a D+. I got a D+ on the Fantasy Pros, so I feel great.
I haven't even looked. I'm looking live right now to see. It gave me a B-, 7th place projection. So
somebody in our league had a 100 score. Somebody had a 100 score. Yeah. So, it is, like I said, mistakes I've made a few, and I would love to redo both my catching picks, because I could have punted that out and missing on Zebi, because I've taken him in so many places this winter. And maybe that just sets the tone for my disappointment when I'm not going to get him in Phoenix this coming Saturday, because the room's going to be hot on that, because we all like the guy. So I will try to find some other options there, but I would love to redo. If I could do it all over again, it would be attack the catcher position better. And yeah, really that is my regret. And so that's some homework that I'm going to have to do before I kick off. I've got a draft. So I can't record this next Sunday because I will be traveling home from labor, but then immediately going to a draft with several folks that listen to this podcast. So I cannot record next Saturday, but everybody listening, this is the same league last year that I walked out with Langoliers and Goodman. So I'll never repeat that catching success again, but I think I did the exact opposite of that yesterday at Morph.
Yeah, I will definitely get a guest. I was bantering back and forth with Eric Samolsky on Twitter, so he may be someone I reach out to. But if you have guest recommendations, either tweet or blue sky me, Justin Mason FWFB, because we're going to add some guest episodes here for the season on Sundays, and then I think on Thursdays as well with Joe and Paul. So if you have guest recommendations, especially if it's someone in the industry that you really like and we haven't had on before. I always love getting on kind of newer people. We love the Eric Samolskys and the Ryan Bloomfields and the Bubbas of the world, and we'll definitely have those guys on again during the season. But if there's someone who's lesser known or has never been on the podcast that you'd like to hear, definitely reach out and let me know who you want me to go book, because I'm going to be doing the vast majority of booking for the shows this year.
And before I forget, speaking of reach outs, thanks to somebody was listening the other day when you and Paul were talking and about the Olympic pins, and he wanted that. I forgot whatever he called it, but he says he's a pin collector. Somebody listening to the show reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I have a 2020 U.S. Curling Nationals pin. Does Paul want it?" And I texted Paul. Paul's like, "Hell yes, I do." And
that's
so
awesome.
Share the details, and the person's going to be working on it. So thanks to the listener who reached out to me on Blue Sky and asked the question. And I connected the two, and hopefully Paul gets a pin to add to his collection. So we do check our messages every now and then.
That's really cool. I'm not on social media quite as much as I have been. And if you're not on social media and you want to reach out to me, Justin Mason fantasy@gmail.com is my email that I use for all of my fantasy related stuff. So Jason, want to remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug any work you got going on.
Yeah, find me Blue Sky Jason Collette, RotoWire Collette Calls column that will be coming out this week. Topic to be determined with that, and then I will be come up, say hi if you're going to be at the Sabre conference this weekend in Phoenix. I will be there on Friday. I get there Thursday midday, so I'll be around Thursday, Friday all day. Saturday morning AL labor draft. Saturday afternoon Sabre panel with Dave Adler, myself, Derek Carty, Saris with DVR hosting it. So we get that panel. And then hanging around, then I got to do a red-eye flight home so I can come home for Hardballers League.
There we go.
And try to stay awake.
You can reach me on all social media platforms, Justin Mason, FWFB. I'm running at Fangraphs and Fantasy Pros. I'm on this podcast and the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. That will wrap it up for this episode. For Jason, myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.
Thanks, all.